Episode 13 of Sir Ulrich Hosts Money Matters. This guest today, he started my journey in a way that allows me to integrate with you guys. Back in Miami Bitcoin Conference 22, Anders took me to Neil Jacobs' party. I had the privilege to run into my favorite podcast host, Nico. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. I thought I was gonna have some brilliant, like, fancy thing, but, basically, I can't thank you enough for getting me started. You were so gracious to bring me on the show, you and Phil. It's a privilege to host you. How are you today?
Well, dude, I mean, I'm super grateful for the invite, and I always enjoy our conversations, our lengthy conversations, because we always go down the rabbit hole every time we talk. So, appreciate the invite and happy to be here.
Yeah, and lengthy and not just about Bitcoin and stuff, but you're my friend. We talk about all different types of things. You're a sports fan. You love God. You're a moral guy. You're an ethical guy. I've learned a lot of things from you. And when I've been on your show more than any other show, I think I've been on three times, once with Phil and twice with Opti. I remember the last time I was on, you I was so encouraged. And I was so like envious of this hat. I'm like, I have to get this hat. I have to get this hat. And you were kind and gracious enough to me to give me the hat off your head, even though you don't wear it. You have one in the back of your closet, and you said, "Hey, man, you can have this one." And so, I like to rock this one. It's a simple B with the Simply Bitcoin on the side, represent brand. And it's my favorite hat. I can't thank you enough. And just one of those good memories of how great of a friend you are.
No, I mean, I appreciate that, dude, and like that was the last hat, so we don't have
It
any
was.
more of those.
No, and I did order the other one, so I'm always representing
The
Simply
gold one.
Bitcoin. It's clean. I can't decide which one to wear sometimes.
Oh man, dude, it's the guy that does merch for us. He's so talented, and he has such a good eye for that, and it gets me hyped, man. That you like the merch and the way that it's designed, and that makes me happy. Tells me that I guess I'm doing some things right.
You're doing a lot of things right. And, you're the owner, the founder of this brand called Simply Bitcoin. It's a smooth name. It's a beautiful brand. You have multiple different shows, multiple products, obviously clothing, but like even your YouTube channel is just vast with different ways that the audience can engage with you. Simply Bitcoin Live, when it came around, it was like no one else was really doing that. And you do it cleanly. You just passed the 1,000th episode. There are many popular Bitcoin shows and channels out there, obviously, but in your own words, what makes Simply stand out from the competition?
I mean, so I I I loved YouTube. I love YouTube. I still like I spend a good amount of my time on YouTube. I'm a consumer of YouTube, and YouTube is like a very it there's a very unique style of content on YouTube. And what a lot of people forget is that when you make media, you have to think about the distribution of that said media. And I didn't know this when I started, but there's a specific type of way to make media on YouTube for it to perform. If you don't make it that way, it won't perform. And at Bitcoin 2021, my first kind of main stage appearance, I had a friend of mine who I happened to get the main stage at the Bitcoin 2021 conference, the one that Naim Bukele made the announcement. And I wasn't like, no one knew who I was and like whatever. And I had the opportunity to pitch the idea of Simply Bitcoin. And I was like, look, a lot of these altcoin channels and crypto channels, they're using clickbait tactics and trending topics in order to garner views. And what I noticed at that point in Bitcoin's history, Bitcoin only media was in its infancy and no one was doing that. So I said, okay, let me do this with Bitcoin. A couple years later, it seems like there was a market for it. It seems like that niche wasn't filled yet. And that was the theory of the case. And then it led me, now it gave me this media company. When I started, this was a hobby. This was like a passion project. I didn't have it uh, experience and a career or whatnot. And it opened many doors and it gave me a ton of experience on like whatever. And I had no idea that my YouTube know-how from the years of consuming content on the platform and being on the platform and loving the platform, I had no idea that it was going to open all these career opportunities, whether it was, you know, working for someone or starting my own company, like kind of being a YouTuber. Like I could have never have imagined that. You could have never have told me that. I would have never have believed it. So what makes Simply unique, I would say, is that we are a YouTube channel, and that's how I approach it. I don't approach it from any other angle. I love YouTube, and I'm proud to be called a YouTuber, even though the platform has censored as of late and all that. But I still love what it used to represent and what it still kind of represents. You can't get rid of it. Like it has a network effect at this point. So that was a runaround to your question, but I hope I answered it.
No, I think you did. And I mean, I think you give an example that a passion can become a career. And I mean, I saw you do this, and I'm like, this sucker isn't going away. It's not a fad. It just continues to grow. From the first time I went on your show to the second time, maybe it was 6 months in separation, maybe it was 8 months, but I was like, I'm like, wow, like you are evolving. You are evolving in real time, and I can only imagine what 2026 Simply Bitcoin would be like. I mean, at that point, you guys were smaller. You told me, you know, you have a lot of people working for you. It's a full on media corporation. Just don't go all three letter on us anytime soon, you know. And speaking of which, your favorite phrase is Bitcoin or slavery. I don't know if you coined it or not, but Jeff Booth always says, you know, no, you know, it's not about who made it, it's about, you know, who propagates it, and it's about ideas propagating, and it doesn't really matter who owns it. But I hear it from you more than anyone: Bitcoin or slavery. And while this is a Bitcoin show, I think the more interesting topic is slavery, and no one can really talk about that better than you. I don't think people understand the significance of this yet. What does this particular slavery actually look like?
Yeah. So I love the Jeff Booth take where it's like open source the memes. 100% agree. And what I got to say is like the trick to these catchy slogans. And so far, I think I've come up with like two or three that like really have been able to like catch on is, and I really take like cues from this book called Rules for Radicals is whenever you say something, you have to say it in a way where no matter the reaction, your end goal comes out on top. So if I get you to react to the slogan Bitcoin or slavery, there's no way that you can socially attack that without making yourself look like a tyrant. Or you can agree with me, which like further propels what I'm trying to achieve. There's no like way of attacking it. And there's other phrases like, you know, if you're against Bitcoin culture, you're against Bitcoin. If you're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom. And the whole point of those slogans is to garner a response in people. And the response, no matter what they do, no matter how they react to that specific slogan, you're achieving what you want. You're achieving your goal, which is to raise awareness and for what you're trying to achieve to be perceived in a positive light. So Bitcoin or slavery is a very simple type of like, it's either Bitcoin or it's slavery. It seems hyperbolic, but in reality, it's not hyperbolic whatsoever because those are the two paths in front of us. And it's just meant to get people to ask the question, like, what do you mean slavery? Or like, that's the whole point. Or like, what do you mean Bitcoin? Like, why is it so binary? Why is it only two options? Like, that's the whole point. It's supposed to be incendiary. It's supposed to get people riled up. That's the entire purpose of that slogan. And the slavery is what a lot of people are not aware of is that most countries on planet Earth are currently developing a central bank digital currency. And what that's going to enable governments to do is going to put the Canadian truckers protest to shame. And the battle lines are a little bit obfuscated right now. They're still saying that cash is going to exist. They're still like trying to give you like little like, oh, we're not going to be that much of tyrants, but history has shown that like progressively over time, governments just increase their power. They don't decrease it. So forgive me if I'm skeptical. And if we have to choose between these two digital futures, these two digital monies, I would rather have a money that no one can control, no one could debase, and no one can confiscate, and no one can change the rules at the flick of a switch for whatever reason, versus a money that is extremely political in nature and can be debased, will be debased, and will be used against the populace that it's supposed to be, you know, using this money, right? So that's what I mean, like between Bitcoin or slavery. Take away the word slavery and put central bank digital currency, and that's really the battle at hand. It's Bitcoin or central bank digital currencies. What life do you want? What life do you want to live in? What life do you want your children to live in? What type of future do you perceive yourself and you want your future generations to live in? And I would say 99% of people, except the politicians, would want a Bitcoin future rather than a slavery / CBDC future.
That's really profound. And the funny thing about what we're talking about now, and the funny thing about YouTube, and the thought leaders like yourself, like Jeff Booth, is that there's a certain narrative that comes about from the true blue Bitcoin people that understand it. And then if you type just Bitcoin in YouTube, at least right now, you get kind of the wide-eyed crypto boy with maybe a chart that talks about it, well, along with some other symbols, a Cardano symbol, an Ethereum symbol, a Doge symbol. And most people who generally say, "I wonder what this Bitcoin is," they just see it as a plaything, a trading simulation game, and simulator that a lot of people are winning for some reason. They don't understand the significance of this because a lot of people don't really feel like they're slaves. I'm not a slave. I can walk outside and smell the roses and go to the grocery store. Where is if you've done so much research, you're a researcher. The CBDC slavery seems to be seems to be theoretical to most people, but where can people look for objective evidence of it happening today?
China, like they've rolled this out, and essentially it's allowed the government to really roll out this social credit system, which I would say, like, just bringing that up in the West is like outside of the Overton window, and you just automatically get labeled a conspiracy theorist. But it's real. Like, just it literally takes 2 seconds of research, and to the point where they'll put your face on a billboard publicly. They'll try to shame you. They'll take away your ability to travel. And this is all interconnected with your money, because your money is, it's like over there they use WeChat, and that's like one of the forms of payments. But when you move the money into the digital realm, like, okay, so you misbehaved or you talk ill of the government. Now all of a sudden we can literally turn off your money. And the scary part about it, and the reason that I call it slavery, is there's soft power to that. You don't have to directly coerce people into doing what you want them to do, like the way that a slave would be with, like, in the Roman times, with like a whip or something, like, like do what I want type of thing. It's soft power. People change their behavior based on the fear of them losing access to money, therefore them not being able to feed themselves or provide for their family. So therefore they modify their behavior for that environment, and then the government gets a certain behavior out of you because any radical or any rebel just turn off their money, right? And if you want to, like, take a glimpse into the future of, like, saying like that could never happen here, it's exactly what happened in Canada during the Canadian truckers protest. That happened in the West. That wasn't like, some dictatorship company. That was a democracy, and that happened there. And then in the US, like, we're in a very politically charged environment, so I'm not going to comment any direction, but let's just say that there has been people that have been debanked because of their certain political beliefs that they have. So Imagine living in a world where the government no longer has to ask a bank to turn off your account. There's just a bureaucrat in the capital city of your country that's just like, oh, this guy, that tweet, off.
Just
You know?
streamline the process.
That's terrifying. And again, you're going to modify your behavior because guess what? I love the CCP. Great guys. Your social credit system goes up. Now you get access to better loans. Now you get access to this. What are you but not a slave? You're literally saying exactly what they want you to say so that they can give you like some breadcrumbs and they can reward you for acting that way. That is like some dystopian level central planning.
Yeah, it's no longer actual money exchanged for work, exchanged for labor, exchanged for goods and services. It's essentially a voucher that enables the government to maintain its power, maintain its sovereignty over you, as long as you basically just do whatever they say. And the problem is, it takes away free market economics, where the things that the government may want you to say or do may not actually be true value creation. And what ends up happening is the world continues to fall into debt, fall into price fixing, fall into all different types of mistakes that come from a central planning economy. And China, America, Canada, Europe, they're all heavily bounded by central planning because there is essentially a central bank there. And so that leads me to my next question, because many people say these scary scenarios could never happen in their societies for a number of reasons. Partially, hey, look, we wear nice clothes, we're in the West, it's sunny, it's we can watch whatever we want on TV. But of course, we know that we already went through examples of where that's not the case. My question to you is like, where's the marginal changes that people should be looking for? And you've probably mentioned them already, kind of, but like as people watch this episode, it's like, wow, like I'm aware now. What should I be aware of going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think you really just have to pay attention to, like, not pay attention to what they say, but pay attention to what they do. And when Elon bought Twitter, what came out in terms of the collusion between the federal government and a lot of these social media platforms, that they were literally censoring the speech of Americans based on certain political rhetoric that was coming out. And that was completely against the First Amendment, like completely like shatters it. But they'll hide behind, oh, it's a private company that could do what they want. And that literally is like the definition of fascism, when a private company works with the state. Like, that is nuts, like crazy to me. And yeah, like that was unheard of. The response during the pandemic, like the way that they coerced people, to put it nicely, to take certain medical, like severe medical decisions about what they could do and what they couldn't do with their bodies. And then there was economic consequences to it. Like, you know, all you got to do is just like open your eyes a little bit and you'll be like, wow. And then ask yourself, if that trend continues for 5 to 10 years, what happens? Right. And I think what's really happening, like if you were to zoom out, like what's really happening and why I'm overly optimistic actually is I think we lived in a world where before the internet, there was a handful of outlets where you can get media. And you can make a very strong case that media was controlled. It was somewhat subdued. And now you have mass scale peer-to-peer communication on a worldwide level. And all of a sudden, you have ideas that are completely not approved by, you know, the mainstream sources. Like the Roaring Kitty live stream today had 609,000 live viewers. That is more viewers than CNN gets average, just to kind of give everyone a perspective of how many people that is. And this dude was being live streamed to the legacy financial media. Like CNBC was like live streaming his live stream and saying like, oh my God, what is this internet personality going to say and do? So I'm super hopeful because the internet has freed the minds of people and it's awakening the minds of people. And now all of a sudden we can use our own money too, which is what Bitcoin is. And like, no matter what they try to do, censorship wise or control wise, like people are going to have free, like there's a way to achieve freedom of thought and then freedom of money. And you can take that money with you and you can kind of like sovereign individual theory, thesis, whatever, this and that. But I think before the internet, I think people were not aware of how much influence the government had on the mainstream consciousness of people. Like it really was the internet that kind of exposed it. And then they didn't have the ability to shut people's speech, of which they didn't like, even though they tried. You know, they took Tucker off air. They censored speech on Twitter. They censored speech on Facebook, on all these platforms.
Joe Rogan's episodes were taken down.
Remember that?
Brought up and taken down again. They didn't know what to do.
It was crazy. And they didn't know what to do. And now they're adjusting. Now they're just like, wow, this is the best one. I can't believe I forgot about this. Joe Biden tried to roll out, using the Department of Homeland Security, the Ministry of Truth, and he wanted to connect it with the Department of Homeland Security. That is nuts. That is crazy.
With the crazy chick with the wild eyes.
Yeah, it was so nuts. So yeah, I mean, it's all around you, but you have to be awake. You have to be, because if you're still drinking the Kool-Aid, and I'm going to reference the Nayib Bukele article that he wrote for Bitcoin Magazine, which is like, don't drink the elite's Kool-Aid. Their most important weapon, to quote him, is their control on the truth. And it is so true. Like, if you're still consuming mainstream media and taking that as an undeniable fact, you are consuming the Western equivalent of Pravda, which was the state-approved newspaper of the USSR. It is straight up propaganda that is accepted by corporations and countries, but it's most of the time that news isn't serving your best interest. And one of the most I'll leave it with this because I've rambled for a bit. One of the most powerful quotes.
Go ahead.
One of the most powerful quotes. I saw it from this like Twitter guy, I forgot the name, and he was like, if the internet was around in 2003, we wouldn't have gone to war with Iraq. And I was like, wow.
Information. I've written a piece and I just recently released a video talking about the peace dynamic with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is peace because war is essentially proof of stake. The more you have in your control, the more stake you have. If that is the way money is created, power is created through the more you have, the more you will have. War can be propagated forever, and information can be subdued forever. Luckily, now information is decentralized, and like your example of Tucker Carlson, Fox finally had it with him. Too many conspiracy theories, too many questions. That they fired their number one anchor. And guess what? He went to Twitter and
he's
flourishing. And Joe Rogan had twice as many views as Tucker, and Tucker has 3 times as many views as everyone else. And they were trying to shut him down. And they said, you know what? This is bad for business. And as for Tucker, let's just say Twitter said, you know what? We don't want you either. Tucker, the likes of Tucker and Joe Rogan, because they're willing to ask the tough questions and people obviously have an appetite for that, they can almost start their own server and people will just throw them money. And if you're talking about a Noster dynamic, where you're talking about an evolved Noster where people are actually, it's a mature way to get information. And those are the type of people that can bring people to a decentralized platform, because those types of actions by the state, by the fascist, makeup of state and corporation, when those big things happen, people start to realize. And some people just say, hey, this is just the way it is. But for every 100 of those, there may be 5 or 10 that wake up and they start to ask questions, and they'll never go back to that dystopia again. Which reminds me, in terms of this dystopia that's being realized as countries are starting to work and test out CBDCs, or even full on use them like China. Can people avoid CBDC trappings without Bitcoin? And let me modify that question a little bit. There are a lot of people out there that are sovereign freedom fighters, but there's something missing to their equation. They seem to not be into Bitcoin. Their gun rights, their information rights, grow your own food, but Bitcoin is somehow a weird thing, and so they choose to not partake. But everything else is cool. Those people in particular, can they? Is a CBDC an inevitability for even people like that without Bitcoin?
I think we're at an inflection point where people like that don't know it yet, but they're Bitcoiners. And they just haven't been put in a situation where they've been so put up against the wall that they have no choice but to use something like Bitcoin. And it kind of reminds me of like the adoption of Bitcoin and like what the demographics are by country. If I pitch Bitcoin to someone who lives in Argentina, they'll understand it like that. If I pitch Bitcoin to someone in the US, it takes longer. Sometimes you don't get the response. They'll be like, why should I use that? So I think that there are certain, without getting into too specifics, because I want to be inclusive in the messaging, but there are certain political ideologies and viewpoints of the world that makes you extremely open to not using a government mandated currency. And I think those groups of people are like the lowest hanging fruit of the next people that are going to come in. And I think the people that are bigger fans of big government and social controls and capital controls and wealth redistribution are not going to be fans of this technology because it inherently protects you from all those things, specifically the wealth redistribution aspect. And I'm not talking about direct taxation, because there's two mechanisms of wealth redistribution. And I would say that one is more severe than the other, which is wealth redistribution via inflation. And that one's the psyop, because like literally we actually played this on today's Simply show, Ulrich, which is there's these people melting down saying, I work 2 jobs, I can't make ends meet, they just sent me a $700 IRS check, like what the F is going, like they just debased the currency, I don't understand what's going on. That person is a Bitcoiner. They just don't understand. They don't get that there's a solution to this. That's not a political one. It's not voting for the orange guy or the blue guy or the red guy or whatever. It is literally you taking agency and action, opting out of the system entirely and voting with your wallet on where you're putting your energy, your time, your work, rather than seeking what demigod is going to fix your solution based on who you're voting for. And that transition of thought is going to take a lot. I think it's a generational thing, man. I don't think that this is an easy thing. I like, people are still praying to, the fiat politics and then thinking that either Joe Biden or Trump is going to solve your issues. Like, what they're going to do is that they're either going to provide a hostile or friendly environment for you to flourish on your own. Like, that's what they're going to do. Like, to think that the government can step in and say, hey, we're going to come in, swoop you off your feet and save you guys is completely naive. And I think it's those people specifically that are going to not necessarily be the last ones. I'll say that.
No, it's fine. And if you have more to add, then I would love to hear it. But I had to interject because it's so, the thing that you're talking about. And for those who are watching, it's no secret. Of course, I do short 10-minute videos for Swan Bitcoin. as my other little gig in the Bitcoin space. And no one other than Nico Moran here trained me in all I know for those types of videos. And I thank you for that. My most recent video that was released on Wednesday literally talks about this very thing, where we talk about that there are these three options, these three main options: Kennedy, Biden, and Trump. And they've all had something to say about Bitcoin. The catch is that no one should seek solace in the narrative from someone who is trained and groomed to essentially tell you what you want to hear to make sure that you vote for them. And while there may be political parties or philosophies that may lend themselves more naturally to Bitcoin, or and lend themselves not as naturally as you mentioned, the catch the 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 baseline matter is that these people, one, could lie and tell you something and then flip a script at a moment's notice. Eric Adams, mayor of New York, or they just, or whatever they do, whenever they're in office, they realize that they really can't control this network, and you're better off just focusing on learning about what Bitcoin is, stacking your sats, and letting the economy play itself out, because fiat's dying, Bitcoin's flying, and you kind of want to get on that train before you kind of miss out on an opportunity essentially of a lifetime. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So first of all, a huge fan of your videos, Ulrich, and it was an honor to get to work with you, man. It was great memories,
The
man.
best teacher, and you put me
And
through the freaking ringer.
I mean, we did it fast, man. We did it in a couple of months. It's so crazy, but I really enjoyed that our working together and working in the future together. I know that we're gonna do so again. And what I gotta say is like, and man, I hate essentially all these topics because it's such a politically charged environment are extremely divisive. But let's just try to take our emotions out of it and like whatever. And I'm speaking to the audience, of course.
Yes, sir.
If you look at it logically, there are three candidates. One candidate has been hostile to Bitcoin and been very hostile towards the industry, proposing the 30% the income tax on the miners, denied Caitlin Long's federal banking charter. Multiple Lightning wallets have just pulled out of the United States because of the regulatory environment. Like I can literally name the list of things banning the basically saying like, oh, we're gonna ban self-custody. Like it's just like so many things.
And all the actions actually recently were like in the last 9 months. Like it
Yeah,
was like it just piled on right before the election. Continue.
exactly. So, and I could literally point out the evidence and say, specifically the Biden administration, I think more importantly, the people behind him, specifically Elizabeth Warren, they do not like the industry. And it's obvious as to why. And I kind of touched upon that earlier. If a lot of your political power comes from wealth redistribution means, you don't want to give up. You don't want to concede that. So there's one option. The other two options have been not only pro Bitcoin, but they've also been anti CBDC, right? So from a regulatory aspect, is even if Biden gets his way, do you think he's going to be able to ban Bitcoin in the United States? Absolutely not. But what I can tell you is that he'll make the life of Bitcoin entrepreneurs and the Bitcoin industry in the United States, he could set it back a couple years, like without a shadow of a doubt. So as someone who is a first generation American and I got pitched on the idea of what America represents, yeah, I can say, fuck this. I'm moving to El Salvador. I speak fluent Spanish. It's not, I'll do that. Right. But I also love the style. And I know, you do too, Ulrich. I love the lifestyle of living in a major city in the US.
I live in Los Angeles, and it's hard for me to leave. I try to find the nice communities with that kind of like freedom, but it's, yeah, I get it. It's hard to leave.
Like I like driving my car. I like the convenience of living in the US and all the, the things that come with it. And it would be, and I've lived in developing countries before. Yeah, it's cheaper, but there's like there's another side to it as well, and that doesn't mean that you can deal with it. But I love living in the U.S. It would be a shame for the U.S. to lose its advantage. Like it's basically it's entrepreneurial advantage, something that Europe has completely lost, man. Like try rolling out or starting a company in Europe, you're gonna get inundated, you're gonna drown in the bureaucracy and the taxes and all that stuff. It's not a very good type of environment to grow a business. So is the US going to go the way of like, because the government feels threatened now that it has competition and money, and they're trying to, the most anti-American, un-American thing I've ever heard, which is like get rid of a whole industry. Like what the fuck is that? Excuse my language, but like, what is that? That's insane. So I'll say this, we didn't make this political. Like we, as an industry, we didn't say Republican Party, Independent Party, whoop-de-doo. They made it political by taking that stance, and then they gave an opportunity to the opposing candidates that are saying, you know what, actually, we're going to be friendly towards this industry. And it's what you said. How can we believe them? Right. And that's a really good point. Yeah. I don't believe Donald Trump. I don't believe Kennedy, but I trust their incentives though. And now that we have, you know, certain parts of the industry pouring millions of dollars in terms of you know, sponsoring or, you know, advocating for these candidates, they're going to have some type of handcuffs in terms of their ability to just flick the switch once they get into office. And that is the most like unemotional, purely just from a rational logic perspective. And I'm aware of the politically charged environment, but that is the reality. To simplify it, TLDR, one candidate is pro CBDCs, anti Bitcoin. The other two are anti CBDCs, pro Bitcoin. From a Bitcoiner's perspective, who are you going to vote for? Now, there's the accelerationist argument of the Bitcoiners. I disagree with them completely, which is kind of like the more shit burns down, like burns down quicker, the more the faster the adoption of Bitcoin. I just got to say that I think people underestimate the ability of the federal government to fuck shit up, especially if they're if they're trapped in a corner, just based on U.S. history. Like, this is a country that made holding a medal illegal, punishable by going into a box because you're holding a specific type of medal. Like, that is insane, right? So I wouldn't underestimate what the bureaucracy, what the administrative state, some people call it the deep state, what they would do if they were pressed into a corner and they didn't have the ability to print money anymore. Like, you have 11 million people that are federal employees. It's a lot of people, man. It's a lot of people. That's what I gotta say.
That's fine. You know, it's funny because like at some point, you know, they will reach that road. You would just hope that, you know, by that time, maybe adoption is so abundant that there will be a lot of people that say, hey, if it's our time to go, it's our time to go. And you have Bitcoiners in office, you have Bitcoiners and high ranking officials, CEOs everywhere, and they'll be able to take a stand like, you know, this fiat experiment ran its course. And we hope that it doesn't shock all these no coiners. And it's like, this ain't what I signed up for. Let's go to war. You can only hope. Now, before we go on to a few other questions, I want to talk to you about some of your accolades, some of your milestones that you've personally achieved. But I do want to talk about RFK and Trump just for one question per each, and I'll just ask it in totality. RFK has never posted about Bitcoin on his policies for his website, Kennedy24.com. Where do you find that strange that the guy who went to the Bitcoin conference in Miami, keynote speaker, and it's $1.36 trillion asset, do you find it strange that you can't find Bitcoin anywhere on his website? And secondly, for Trump, do you find it interesting that he went from during his presidency, saying it's gets its value from thin air back in 2019. And then even as recent as February, he said that what did he say? He said that Bitcoin is nice, but it should be regulated. And I believe in that one currency called the dollar. And then of course he said his thing in May at the Libertarian Convention where it's like, yeah, I'll free Ross and go Bitcoin. Those kind of things make me cautious about those two candidates, even though there's plenty of red flags about Biden. Those two things about RFK and Trump, do you have any comment on those things?
Yeah, so those are really good points. Like, so with Kennedy, I know that he has a personal stack of a certain amount of Bitcoin. Now, in regards to it not being on his website, maybe his campaign did research into it and they're like, you know, for whatever reason, if someone runs into it on my website, perhaps it could be perceived as a negative type of thing. However,
that's a marketing decision. Like he can be like he can be pro Bitcoin and not wear a Bitcoin gold chain all over the place. That's essentially what you're saying?
you know what's awesome is that like we don't even need them to be pro Bitcoin. We just need for them to just get the F out of the way and do nothing. With the status quo, Bitcoin is going to win, right? And Bitcoin's going to win regardless. But let's just say that from a regulatory perspective, things stay exactly the same. Doesn't matter. I don't even need someone to be pro. If they want to be an accelerationist and they want to be like Nayib Bukele, sweet. But we don't need that. I think that's inevitable based on the game theory and the incentives. Now, in regards to Trump, no, it doesn't surprise me at all because he went from a position of power and influence in the presidency to what I don't want to get into specifics, but let's just say that it was a lot of interesting things happened in the last 4 years. And now all of a sudden, he is in an election where you can make the argument that if he loses, he could potentially face jail time. And what's crazy is that the other guy might face jail time if he loses. So it's like we're in an extremely politically charged environment where I think that all the metaphorical knives are out in terms of finding an edge to win, right? And if that means going to a libertarian conference where 75% of the room is booing you and telling them what they want to hear because you want that voter base, right? Because American elections are really decided in the middle, not so much the left or the right ends of the spectrum. I wouldn't push it past a professional politician to do just that. Now, do I think he's going to free Ross? I would give it like a 60% chance. Do I think he's gonna protect Bitcoin the way he is? I think he's gonna be a lot friendlier to it than Biden, for sure. But could you really fully trust someone? No. But I can't tell you. Like Biden is basically saying like, "Fuck this, I don't like it," and the other guys are like, "We do like it," and now it's just like, you know, like who do you go with?
That's right.
In my opinion, so. It's a very interesting. I'll say this one last thing. I did not think that things were going to happen as quickly as they have. I thought that this was going to be an issue in 2028. I did not think it was going to be an issue in 2024.
It's wild. I was literally saying the same thing while I was doing all my research. I can't believe I'm researching this stuff right now. I have plenty of information. I would do 2 or 3 videos, like one on each person. It's amazing. Bitcoin surprises you every chance it gets. And you are surprising people as well. You know, you went from a no-name YouTuber, like, you know, doing things, you know, with like bad lighting and stuttering like me. And all of a sudden you show up on NBC. And when I went back to, you know, prep for this interview, I didn't realize it was so long ago. In December 22, you went on the NBC show Press Here with Scott McGrew. Could you give the audience a little glimpse into the backstory of how a show on a big 3-letter media corporation brought you on for a segment?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of rounds in the legacy media, and I don't call it mainstream media anymore because it's not, and we are the mainstream media. But it's in terms of being booked on one of those shows, it is very different than being booked on a podcast. Being booked on a podcast is you have a personal relationship with the podcaster, and over time, you eventually get booked. In legacy media, it's like extremely proof of stake, right? It is like who you know, and they're going to do you a favor based on who you know. And part of one of the strategies that we had at Simply initially was, okay, let's do PR and grow via legacy media. As time started progressing over time, I realized like, no, I am the captain now meme. Like, I'm like, we are the media now. You know, like you guys need us more than we need you. And right now we're at a crossroads where that's not obvious to everybody, but I guarantee I don't think CNN's going to exist 10 years from now. And I would be
I just want to
surprised.
say agreed. All the ratings that come out, it's like, oh my gosh, they're in trouble. I hope Disney doesn't exist either. I'm sorry. Continue.
And the rise of independent content to fill in that void like it has been is going to accelerate. And that makes me extremely excited about the future of independent broadcasting. This hasn't happened to high production yet, but it will. But it hasn't. Now it's still like a cabal of like 5 or 6 studios, and they own everything, and you have to pay for all the effing streaming services, and it's a pain in the ass. But I think as the barrier to entry to make content continues to go lower, and the equipment we can just buy ourselves, we have the ability to grow our own distribution now, as the example of Roaring Kitty today. There you go. You say I don't believe you. It's like, who is the most watched content creator on the face of the planet? Mr. Beast. It's like a 20-year-old kid gets hundreds of millions of views a month, right? Who's the most popular broadcaster? You said it, Joe Rogan. Who's the second most? Tucker Carlson. They're all independent. They don't have giant production studios behind them. Mr. Beast spends millions of dollars per video, and he's just destroying these legacy kind of media ways of creating production. And I'll add a little nugget in there. And this is why, like, at first, I remember, like, when I was like thinking about a YouTuber, I questioned myself a lot, and I was like, "There's no way, like, this person has an actual media background, like they were trained for this." But I realized is that actually is you are actually at a disadvantage, because you were trained to make media in a certain way for a certain type of distribution style and broadcast, versus in reality, if you're posting on Twitter, if you're posting on YouTube, you have to be a trained YouTuber in order to succeed on the platform, right? So it's a really exciting time to be in media, because I think we're in the beginning of something effing awesome. And it's like trying to explain the internet to someone in 1999 of look at what we're doing right now, bro. If I explained that to you, you would have just invested everything. like, dude, this is going to change everything. Like, we are there in terms of media, like what the potential for independent content is going to be. And I think it's going to like blow everyone's mind 10 years from now. It's going to be like an amazing world. It's not just CNN and Fox News. It's going to be what do you want? What do you like to watch? What is the type of personality that you like? What is it? Whatever. There's going to be 1,000 choices, and they're all going to be competing to get your attention. It's going to be amazing, in my opinion.
It's crazy because, yeah, 10 years ago, YouTube was still around, and, there was a discovery period trying to figure out what was this, what makes it work. You have obviously cracked the formula, and you have, bestowed some of that knowledge to me. And I remember asking you, hey man, what's some more knowledge? Like, how do I get my videos? It's like, here's how you get more knowledge. Watch YouTube videos. It's like, you have got to watch them, and you have to sense a trend. It's no different. And of course, my background, basketball player, Bitcoin ballers, love basketball, still play this day as in my old ass self. But I can sense the trends and I can predict he's going to go there, he's going to pass there. I saw Jason Tatum post up at the high post. I said he's going to take 1 2 dribbles, he's going to make a floater. It happened. I was watching with Corey last night, and it was like I was surprised. I was surprising myself that I caught that trend. And this trend that we see with YouTube, where me, essentially an engineer coming from the military industrial complex, arguing with all my status friends about Bitcoin and about politics for years. And you know why I decided? I'm just going to start making my own stuff. And 10 years ago, that wouldn't be possible. 15 years ago, forget about it. We have reduced the barrier of entry to where if you have a good story and time and energy, you can grow your skill in order to create a narrative, um, add to the overarching narrative that people will want to consume. And all of a sudden your platform is better than the water cooler talk or the stoop talking, the trash talking at the barber shop. And it's like, I win, sucker. because because it seems like 10,000 people agree with me, and it seems like you only agree with you.
It,
A- And that's the future.
dude, that's one of the things that I love, and you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And that's one of the things that I love about social media is that, like, a follower is a follower, bro, and a view is a view, and they don't lie. And the whole, like, this is how you make media, and this is what the studio will approve. Dude, I just saw a dude, like a grown man, like wearing a cast and like acting like stupid, get twice as much views as CNN. I see someone talking about like elk hunting with a bow while tripping on mushrooms being like the most popular guy. So you can't sit in front of me and say, this is the way that you make media. This is the way that you're supposed to talk, because this is how you're not going to convince me. I'm going to be like, okay, that's what you say, but like, what about this? And it kind of like it rightly so, because it's an industry that's being disrupted. You either have the humility to acknowledge that and pivot, or you kind of react in a way where it's like the horse and buggy people. I'm pretty sure that they didn't like cars initially, but it's here, and you like, people have to get used to the fact that, like, dude, like, the person that gets more views is just winning. Like, that's it. Like, it doesn't matter whether you have this emblem of production. Like, if someone records a video, puts 100% less effort than you, or like 99% less effort, but their video goes viral, and then you put 100 times more effort and your video just gets less views, like, the market is telling you exactly what's going on.
Just math.
So it's nuts. But again, like, if you spend enough time on the platforms, like specifically with YouTube, like, it's like 5 years, dude. And then after like the third or fourth year, it was like a eureka moment. I was like, oh, it's so obvious. It's not intuitive whatsoever. Like, it's like you don't even realize it's happening, but people people have gotten so good at it that yeah, just if you learn the platforms, it's like a superpower. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah, and going back to these platforms, as these platforms are dying, this MSNBC entity that had you on, and I'm happy to hear. I before I ask that question, how many times have you been on NBC or Legacy Media?
So I've been on Fox once, and then I'm at MSNBC. I've been on twice. Yeah. And then I've done radio shows like at least like 10, 12 times.
Okay.
Like traditional
good.
radio. Yeah.
Okay. You ever went on Mark Moss's radio show?
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah,
Okay.
I love Mark's show. Yeah.
Because he is, at least he was or is local to LA on AM radio. So I've
Big
heard
fan
him.
of Mark. Yeah.
Yep. Right on. And so I'm going back to this one that I remember and that I actually reviewed recently, the one from a year and a half ago. And I'm just thinking, like, December 22, it's FTX time frame. And they have Nico on. And I'm looking at, oh wow, it's June 24. Bitcoin's hit an all-time high before the halving. I don't see an exponential growth of media personalities, except for, maybe a few Swan people here or there going on NBC, Swan people, Natalie, you've obviously gone on, but like, they wanted to talk to you when Bitcoin was 18,000. And it's just funny, is it that they just wanted to allegedly kick it while it's down, see a crazy who's not gonna sell, all the way down to 0 and laugh at him? What do you think is he admitted he's a skeptic. Where's the incentive to bring you on at that point? What's the story about that?
It's very similar to YouTube. It's a trending topic.
Mhm.
And what they do is that it's a pay to play game, legacy media. And like that's essentially how you get airtime on the legacy media. It's extremely proof of stake. And they have a Rolodex. And whenever there's a trending topic, whether it's Bitcoin making an all-time high or making a low, they just send out a bunch of emails, and then your agent reaches out and says, okay, like I'll do this one and I'll get this one. And it's like total professional type of PR type of machine. That's essentially how the legacy media works. And again, from the viewer's perspective, you don't know any of this. So you're just awestruck. You're like, holy shit, like it's CNBC. But from the kind of internals, you're just like, this is pay to play. And that's why, like, I believe that independent media it's actually authentic. You're going to actually get a text from the person that wants to host you.
Free market economics. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're actually going to get kind of invited to it that way. So it's very interesting, but they have all the know-how. And I'll tell you something, this is going to make you laugh. What do you think we recorded on? StreamYard.
Oh no, StreamYard. It's
StreamYard.
You think it's some big platform that I can't even touch? Like, it's like, 20,000 a license. Oh wow, that's so funny.
StreamYard
Demonetizing.
Restream.
Yeah.
That's it.
Demonetizing. That's so funny.
And branding.
Barrier
they do the branding, whatever. But the thing is, I've worked in media, so I can mimic that completely. I can put the bells and whistles to make it seem like whatever, but it's pretty basic graphic design and music and production. Like it's not really that complicated. The average individual could learn it, and it's not going to cost you a lot of money, right? And the fact that we're using the same tools, I think, speaks volumes. Right. And they're just riding on the coattails of the kind of established name that has existed for so long. But how long is that going to last? That's what I got to say. Right. Yeah. But again, it's extremely useful in the sense that it's like, holy shit. Like if every time I post one of those on Twitter, they pop the fuck off. Why? Because there are people like, oh my God, he's breaking outside of the echo chamber. He's like, and whatever. But once you're in the background, I'll be honest with you, Ulrich, like it's what we're doing right now is exactly the same. It's just different branding.
Crazy. It's every time I interact with you, it's eye-opening in multiple different ways. You're a great teacher. You're a great trailblazer. You're a great friend, and I appreciate you coming on. I do want to ask one more thing before you go. I gotta ask you, I never do this because I'm like that grizzled, Bitcoin maxi is like, forget the number, go up. I gotta ask you, what's your price prediction for next year? What is it gonna touch?
Okay, so I'll tell you the general kind of consensus to what I see, which is Bitcoin does the exact opposite of what everyone thinks, right? That's like, if everyone knew, the general market theory is that it's going to hit between 100 and 200K. That's what everyone thinks, right? You ask that's the general consensus, right? So if everyone is thinking 100 to 200K, we either go way below that, right? Or we go way above that, right? So just based on that thinking, I think we might go way north of 200K. And I think it might surprise a lot of people just because it can't be that the entirety of the market is anticipating the price correctly up to 100 to 200. Like that is impossible. That's not what markets do. They do the exact opposite. And then I'll kind of bring up the 2021 bull market. I think the 2021 bull market was lackluster. It was disappointing. And a lot of people anticipated 100K. And I think that they were right for anticipating 100K, but that the artificial scenario in there, the introduction of the China mining ban, and I literally posted this on my Twitter the other day. You see the hash rate and the price, and the hash rate literally drops and the price follows with it, which makes perfect sense. Those miners need to sell Bitcoin, and they have a huge portion of the supply in order to relocate to more favorable jurisdictions. As the hash rate recovers, so did the price, and then you got that double top scenario, but it took away all the momentum out of that. I don't think there's going to be another China mining ban because they could only pull that trigger once.
You only do it once.
So I think we might have a blow off top. And if we have a blow off top, I think it's going to go a whole lot higher than people anticipate. So let's see what happens. Maybe 2, 3, 400, 500K, which is unheard of. But if I would have told you in the beginning of 2017, 20K, you would have laughed me out of the room. Right. And Bitcoin was under 1,000 in the beginning of 2017. No one would have believed me. They would have been like, this dude's crazy. So I think we have a setup where you have all these institutions, you have the pension funds, you have this perfect scenario where Bitcoin is being adopted by these huge money players, that it could create this crazy type of all the planets align and stars align type of moment. And that could be fireworks in 2025. But at the end of the day, no one knows.
Well said, well tailored, and well protected. At the end of the day, no one knows, and that is the correct answer. So you passed the test, my friend. Nico, thank you for being on my show. I've been looking forward to this one. As soon as I got this podcast, you were actually saying I'm interviewing the guy who gave me the opportunity to be interviewed first. So you and Phil, for that matter, I thank you so much, and I'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's an honor and a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Right on. So that was Nico Moran from Simply Bitcoin. Again, he is a trailblazer in the way we are consuming Bitcoin media today. Anyone who's watching my podcast, I'm pretty sure you're watching his. So for those people in the future who are just diving through the internet, diving into rabbit holes, and you come across my platform, go check out Simply Bitcoin TV. It will change your perspective on what Bitcoin is. My name is Sir Ulrich, like my father before me. Tune in next time when we bring on another brilliant Bitcoin guest.